Welcome in, strangers. You're from out of town, ain't you? Happy to give you directions around town, but I warn you, you stay away from that old Thompson farm up on the hill down there. It's trouble. Lots of trouble. Why? Because there's a monster that live up there. He'll kill you before you know what happened. Use your body to fertilize his fields and feed his pigs. Nobody know where he came from. Some say he's a Thompson's boy, but I never heard of them having no child.
I have an interesting history with the Hillbilly. And back when I first started playing him, I loathed this character. He was, at the time, my most hated killer to play. I hated how hard his chainsaw was to control. I hated the ages it took to recover from hitting objects. I hated the 1,000,000,000% turn rate in the very beginning of the chainsaw sprint. I hated everything. And when I made my return in early February of this year, I had initially thought Billy still felt awful. This time around, I could at least admit that there was a reward to learning Billy where there wasn't before, and it wasn't until I dedicated a full week to him that I began to grow an immense fondness for the killer, that they became my very first official main, something I had never really had before, mostly jumping from killer to killer as I felt like it. Not only has Billy become my main, but he reignited my love for the game in more ways than one. You might think this is going to lead to nothing but gushing for the next hour or so, but I do have some complaints here and there. With all that being said, check your screen or the description now for time codes for each section. Remember, this is mainly an audio experience, so you're free to throw this on a second monitor or in the background. And let's jump right into Max Thompson Jr., otherwise known as the Hillbilly. While listening to the Hillbilly's lore, one phrase kept popping up in my mind over and over again: cartoonishly evil. This is honestly one of the first major misses I've found in the lore department. The basis of this entire story seems to be written from the perspective of a 13-year-old who's watched way too many cheesy 80s psychological horror films. See, my favorite kind of horror is the type of horror that talks about descents into madness. The Telltale Heart is my favorite horror story of all time. I'm also a massive fan of Little Black Bugs by Vincent V. Cava. Both of these stories delve into the minds of people who have suffered massive psychological breaks. I even did something similar in my anthology series, Tales of the Lorekeeper, with my story I'm Not Crazy, where we cover the tale of a man who was slowly driven to madness by a visage. It's a great subject to delve into. It makes for a fantastic framing device for psychological horror as a whole, and it's honestly my favorite type of story to listen to. And they attempt to do something similar here. Max Thompson Jr. was never given an actual name, instead being called Boy all his life. After being born disfigured, his mother and father lock him in a brick cell, only letting him out to work as a farmhand. Throughout his life, the chief of police and his deputies regularly come out to the farm to watch Max slaughter cows for their entertainment, as his dad laughs along with them, verbally and physically abusing Max. Max's only companion is a TV that he was given to shut him up at night. One day, Max snaps, kills his mother, his father, the police chief, and by my count, roughly 400 deputies. The reason I use cartoonishly evil for this story is because there are so many things that are just absurd. I've listened to enough true crime podcasts and seen what goes on in modern times even to know that cops are often corrupt bastards. I'll even buy that the entire police department is on this weird sicko sideshow that they've got going on. I'll even accept that in this small town, a disfigured child might cause the parents to be overly abusive pricks. But why were there so many deputies? 400 is an obvious exaggeration for comedic effect, but there's fucking like 7 of them that get killed. They keep spawning in as the chief needs them. Where's this endless amount of cows the farmer keeps given to have Max slaughter them in increasingly gruesome ways that would be counterproductive to getting any use out of their carcasses? Why does the chief take so long to catch Max when the killing first start? Who brought the dogs to the farm and what happened to them? How in the hell were the Thompson bodies never found when like 15 people were killed in a single day? When did Max have time to clean that up? There's just so many things that pull me out of the immersion of the story, and it sucks because it could have been a great story. Personally, I prefer the original short bio before the tome where Max's parents fed him through a hole in the wall. What if instead, one day Max plays dead, and when they go in to get his body out of there, he springs to life and kills both of them? What if instead the tome focused around how anyone who goes to the Thompson farm never returns, so that it's basically considered haunted? The sound of an eerie chainsaw floating down into town. In the beginning of this video, I tried this. I wanted to give a more haunting effect to the disfigured boy gone mad. One thing I'll give behavior is the tome does talk a lot about Max's mental state. He's constantly fighting between just wanting his parents to love him and hating them viscerally. He's conflicted. He wanted to be a hero like Superman. He wanted loving parents like Beaver. He wanted to be normal, but the world wouldn't let him. There's a line in the tome that says, "Monsters aren't born. They are created." And I love this line. It's not original by any means necessary, but it gives a much deeper dive into the psyche of Max because it is him who thinks it. It is him that creates that line. It paints a brilliant picture of a boy who wanted to be good, but because of how the world treats him, he has to be a monster. He has to be someone who hates the world because they hated him first, or at least that's how he feels. But all of that deep and complex characterization is lost in this cavalcade of ridiculous bullshit and scenarios made to paint all the adults in the world as these sadistic psychopaths. Psychopathy is an interesting discussion, one that I'm not going to delve entirely into this video, or any video that's ever going to show up on this channel for that matter, because realistically, according to the APA, there is only around 1% of people who have severe psychopathy, but around 30% of people suffer from some level of it. Every adult in this story is a severe psychopath. And that's just isn't fucking possible. I know it seems weird that I'm reading this far into a short bit of lore from a video game where the lore doesn't largely matter, but I'm autistic, so leave me alone. At the end of the day, I'm willing to give the lore a 3.0 out of 5, if only because it does dive into Max's psychological breakdown extremely well. But the outside of that is just unimmersive garbage with shock value made for the purposes of shock value. Great for cheesy's 80 horror, bad for telling a compelling story.
If you're a fan of audio horror stories, then check out my second channel, where I write, voice, and produce my own original stories, released every single Sunday, so you can go to bed with your creeps at night. Link is in the description.
And so we return to the add-ons are just objects to go with weapon philosophy of ad design. I really hate this design thematically because the add-ons would give such a great opportunity to let us in on the character's personality, mindset, and even lore bits we would have not known before. But no, instead we have chainsaw parts and like 4 different kinds of shoes. Woohoo. Billy's perks also don't really paint any sort of thematic picture. He spends most of his life locked in a basement, so I don't know how Lightborn fits in. Tinkerer's is okay, I guess. It kind of makes sense. He tends to fiddle with the machinery given his power is a chainsaw. And Enduring is the only one that I really buy as fitting the character because he is a monster who is basically this unstoppable machine. He can't be contained and he overcomes everything thrown his way. Realistically, Enduring is probably his most thematic perk. I'll talk about the gameplay of perks later, but Enduring really fits him thematically. It's something that showcases exactly the kind of brutal killer that he is, or more realistically, the unstoppable killer that he is. Brutality is the Trapper's thing, but unstoppability is the Billy's thing, and that is something that is really interesting. Finally, his aesthetics and his Mori. Billy's aesthetics are actually really good. The design team did a great job of creating an image of body horror that still fits some realm of reality. The deformities all smooth in nicely together, and his walking animation has him limping from the way his legs seem to be mismatched. I like the way he swings his mallet by dropping his hand to the base of the handle so he can let the weight of the head and momentum do most damage before readjusting. His grip so he can keep a firm hold on it while he moves. As for his chainsaw sprint, it looks bad from a third-person perspective. While revving it, Billy does this weird backbend thing as he lifts the chainsaw above his head and seemingly looks up for whatever reason. It just doesn't make any sense when looking at it from afar. The actual sprinting is fine, as is the recovery after letting go of the chainsaw. As for the Mori, it's better than the last two, but it's still really bad. It's basic, as all original Moris are, but with Billy revving his chainsaw and running it over the back of the fallen survivor. If I were to redesign the Mori, I'd incorporate the mallet, have Billy smack them from the front as they stand up, and have the survivor fall on their back before he revs the chainsaw and disembowels them with it, before bending down to touch the organs being touched a reference to his backstory and the way he killed the chief. Before I give the final score, I have a question. Where the fuck did the chainsaw come from? I know that in concept, this is supposed to be the Bubba tribute, but think about it. A chainsaw is never mentioned in Billy's lore, except in the original bio paragraphs. It's not mentioned once in his tome, or the Arcus memory referring to him. There's supposedly some woods next to the farm, but there's nothing in his lore about his family making him cut down trees for firewood or anything. The chainsaw legitimately exists for the purposes of having a character with a chainsaw. Anyway, for themes, I give Behavior a 2.4 out of 5. A lot of uncreative things that seemingly exist for the sake of existing, and not to tie the character to any tangible lore-based creation. Thematics-wise, Billy is nothing more than a concept that never really got fully fleshed out, and was tied to the backstory given to him. Billy cosmetics are fine. They have variety and paint him in a lot of wild man's type styles. He's everything from a park ranger to a woodsman to a milkman, which is the oddest one out, to be honest. They are nice and varied and give plenty of styles. The blighted skin looks sick as always, and the cat skin is actually one of his better ones. I had asked you guys a while back while I was still writing this video if you wanted me to talk about each cosmetic individually, and some of you said yes, but I'll be real, I don't really know if I can. I tried to, but no matter how much I tried to break everything down, it was just kind of me droning on and on about art design and thematic threads through each outfit, and at the end of the day, I ended up giving all of them a fine rating. I used the word fine in every single outfit description because the cosmetics at the end of the day are just that. I honestly don't know if I'm going to keep doing cosmetic sections or if I'll end up tying them in with the thematic sections. As with this video and the past two, I end up with not a lot to say. I guess the thing about cosmetics in general is you can't judge them off of anything other than whether or not they are worth your money or iridescent shards. I wanted to make a tier list for all these cosmetics showing which ones I think are worth the money, but the time it would take me to screenshot every cosmetic, then edit each one to a sized tier list maker will accept, and then make it all just for it to show up for approximately 35 to 40 seconds in this video is a time sink I don't think I can justify. For now, I'll say this, and this will apply to all killers going forward. If you main a character, find your favorite skin and get that skin. It's not worth spending money on skins for characters you don't play. And at the end of the day, what does it really matter what I think about the skins? If you like the skin, you like it. And I honestly feel like the cosmetics section has been a waste of time, unless there's something worth talking about, like the Trapper Naughty Bear skin. In any case, I give Behavior a 3 out of 5 for cosmetics. They are fine. Just fine. By the end of this section, my feelings on the Hillbilly will either be entirely clear or will leave you in utter confusion, and which one that ends up being will be entirely on how well you listen to what I say here. The best thing to do is to start off with Billy's power, the chainsaw sprint. Hold right click for 2.5 seconds, whereupon Billy gets a rocket up his ass and goes careening across the map at 10.12 meters a second. For the first second of the chainsaw sprint, your turn rate is cranked to 412 degrees a second, allowing you to do something called curving, which basically means you can turn smoothly around obstacles to hit survivors. After that second is up, for the remainder of the chainsaw sprint, your turn rate is decreased to 32 degrees a second. Add-ons can increase your turn rate post 1 second, but not the curved window turn rate. While charging and using your chainsaw, you build up something called overdrive. When the overdrive kicks in, you charge your chainsaw faster and the chainsaw sprint is increased to 13 meters a second. Any survivor hit with the chainsaw sprint goes down instantly from any health state. Hitting objects or letting go of the chainsaw sprint without hitting anything will stun you for 2.5 seconds, while hitting a survivor stuns you for 2.7 seconds. To compare, the basic attack miss or object hit results in a 1.5 second cooldown, while hitting with a basic attack does the same thing as at a 2.7 second cooldown. All this to say that numbers-wise, I think the chainsaw sprint is fine. Overall, numbers-wise, I changed nothing, and the power is so fun and intuitive that Billy went from being my most hated killer in the game to being my main. Some people say Billy is overtuned, and those people are most of the time people who enjoyed facing Billy back when hitting an object would cause Billy to have to write a 45-page essay on why he's so dog shit and shouldn't have hit that object to begin with before he was allowed to fully recover, meaning you would hit an obstacle and the survivor would have time to traverse the length of the Grand Canyon before you'd have another shot at moving your chainsaw. Curving was basically impossible without double engravings, and don't even get me started on the shit add-on spread he had back then. Basically, most of these people saying Billy got overtuned are people who only like facing weak killers, and they enjoy the game when there's no chance of them losing. Good Billies of yesteryear only got enjoyment from the character by actively throwing their games and going for flair over substance. New Billy still allows for that flair, but now he's also accessible. He still retains an incredibly high skill floor, though. The initial 25 matches or so with Billy will be absolute misery, as you constantly find yourself turning when you didn't want to, and hitting objects you shouldn't be hitting. The overdrive will kick in while sprinting sometimes, causing you to fuck up a turn you were controlling perfectly fine, and that can get annoying. But unlike before, learning Billy is actually rewarding now. The problem with Billy before was that once you got over his mountainous skill floor, there was basically nothing left. You could practice low pro flicking, I guess, but there wasn't anything there because old Billy was punished for using his power, and every mistake basically meant you lost the match harder and harder. That all being said, even as someone who is a Billy main and greatly enjoys the character, I find myself more and more frustrated every day playing him, and it's caused me to, at the time of writing this video, take a break from him. Collision in this game is pretty bad. There's weird hitboxes and problems all over the place. By the time you're watching this video, I will have released a video called 3 Things Behavior Needs to Overhaul, and one of those is collision. To put it simply, the hitboxes of objects within the map are not always consistent to their model. This leads to instances where you are constantly banging off what is essentially thin air. Gaps in walls are not always gaps, and you can sometimes bump off leaves or branches that are a good 2 to 3 feet away from you. That's not even covering all of the obnoxious invisible walls like the ones around the roof on the Garden of Jagoffs that stop you from chainsaw sprinting off the top. If the collision wasn't bad enough on objects, however, it's also fucking atrocious on survivors. I have had so many times where the survivors are practically kissing the fucking chainsaw and they do not go down. I have watched in awe as the chainsaw passes directly through survivors and they don't get hit. I have charged at a survivor and somehow, some way, hit the wall behind them. There have been several instances where if a survivor had been a rock or tree or a bit of leaf, I would have hit them, but because the survivor's hitbox is rounded and lags slightly behind them for no reason I can think of, you'll find yourself missing chainsaws you simply should not miss. And don't even get me started on fucking crouch teching. So here's how crouch teching works. Are you ready for this shit? I don't think you are. Here's how crouch teching works. If you crouch in front of a killer with a dash ability that hits on the upper part of the hitbox, typically done to Blight Billy and sometimes Demogorgon, and you are on an even slightly lower elevation than the killer's attack will completely, and for no fucking reason, miss. And when I say slightly, I mean that you can crouch tech in the doorway of fucking Shack because the floor of Shack rests slightly above the ground. So if the killer is in Shack and you are right outside the doorway, you can crouch tech them. It's so god damn stupid. And then little shit for brains will go on Twitter and post them crouch teching in the middle of a wide open field and it working because they found the one random bit of terrain where a pebble caused the hillbilly to be on a technically higher elevation than them, and then go on a 3-day rant about how they're upset because the Billy player called them lucky when they actually are lucky, but they wanted the Billy player, who happens to be a famous streamer, to suck their dick and stroke their ego because, dude, I should have totally outplayed him. Why'd he call me lucky? I'm obviously just better. And this leads to a domino effect of randos coming out of the woodwork trying to cancel a streamer who wasn't even toxic because this community hates the idea that anyone could ever be frustrated at inconsistent mechanics and hitboxes in a video game. And sorry. Anyway, the point is that while playing Billy is fun, it's also annoying. Several maps in the game practically shut down the character, and sometimes, while entire maps don't shut you down, certain loops do. It's incredibly frustrating to like playing Billy for the funny haha chainsaw go burr, only to have to force myself into an M1 situation because there is no way to navigate the loop I'm at. A final frustration is the fact that the chainsaw flicking doesn't exist. Basically, the way this appears to work, I'm not a data miner so I can't confirm for sure, is that when you let go of the chainsaw, the hitbox for the attack lingers in front of you. Which means that if you quickly move your camera and watch the chainsaw go through a survivor's body, it won't hit them because the hitbox doesn't move with your camera. It stays at the spot where you initially let go. This means that you can run into this bizarre scenario where you let go of the chainsaw sprint, turn to the left, and somehow down a survivor to the right of you, and it's incredibly frustrating. Overall, for power and gameplay, I give behavior a 4.5 out of 5. Would be perfect if you just fix the fucking collision and remove crouch decking.
If you've been missing streams and want to see live gameplay, then check out my second channel, De Kaiser VODs, where I upload some of the best games from stream in sometimes compilations or just the games by themselves. We also have a new short posted every single day that contains clips from streams. We'll see you over there. Link is in the description.
Okay, calming down for a bit, let's talk perk design for gameplay wise. Overall, the Hillbilly's perks sit in the B tier pretty comfortably. They all do the job they are meant to do and do it well. I do have one change though, and we'll talk about that in a moment. First, let's talk about Enduring. Enduring is a high B tier perk. Pallet stuns are reduced by 50%, making the stun time go for 1 second instead of 2. I have no issues with the numbers, but I wonder why this doesn't apply to all stuns. DS, flashy saves, wiggle off, head on, etc, etc. I personally think that it should, and while that would probably bump it to A tier, I don't see anything wrong with that. It's a perfectly viable tool to reduce stun times as it's supposed to be. Or maybe they are saving that for when Jason comes to the game for the 40th anniversary or something. Tinkerers. Tinkerers is a mid B tier perk. When the generator reaches 70%, get undetectable for 16 seconds, and get notified which generator it is. This perk is great for info as well as giving you an additional way to follow up on that info. 16 seconds isn't exactly a long time, but I have found it to be very funny on characters like Pyramid Head and Nurse who can attack gens from behind walls. Finally, we have Lightborn, a surprisingly controversial perk. Lightborn makes you immune to blinds, while revealing the aura of the survivors who tried to blind you for 10 seconds. It's also a mid-B tier perk for nothing else than it's a tech perk. If you're new to the channel, tech perks are perks that slot into builds based off the item the survivors are holding. Currently, there are 2 tech perks in the game, Franklin's and Lightborn. Which one you bring is based off which items are prevalent in the lobby. If you see 2 or more medkits, bring Franklin's. 2 or more flashlights, bring Lightborn. If it's 2 of each, bring Franklin's. Toolboxes, maps, and keys aren't important enough to bring either. Toolboxes, while strong, can't be countered with Franklin's because survivors use their entire toolbox on the first gen they work on. Sure, there's a chance that the toolboxes might be sabos, but I don't think it's worth bringing a perk just for that. In any case, Lightborn is a controversial perk because flashlight users are upsetty spaghetti. They can't melt the retinas of killers who have it, and some killer mains are under the impression it actually makes your game harder because the person who is hovering for flashies won't try anymore, and therefore they will just be on gens. Never mind the fact that most of the time someone who gets a flashlight save will go right back to a gen after they get that save, and people who do hover all game for flashlights saves normally are too daft to notice Lightborn, often attributing the missed flashlight to them missing or the game cucking them. I can't count the number of times I've had Lightborn and watched as a P100 nade desperately spins the whole match, trying to get one blind off as I walk towards her and smack her for her hubris. All in all, I give behavior a 4.9 out of 5, with the only thing missing is that Enduring should apply to all stuns.
The Hillbilly add-ons are interesting. Originally going in, this was going to be like, well, there aren't any bad add-ons anymore, but of course there are. There's actually a more even spread than I expected. My main gripe with the add-ons is that they pretty much just consist of number changes, which, if you know me by this point, you know my least favorite form of add-on is number changes. I prefer bonus effects or straight up changing the fundamental way the power works over debuffs and number changes, but of debuffs and number changes, I hate number changes the most.
I've actually gotten flack for this in the past, with people saying number changes actually end up making some killers far more playable. That's not a good thing, guys. Why should we have to rely on add-ons to make characters playable? Why not just call for behavior to buff those character numbers? See, the reason I hate number changes so much, honestly, might make a video on this, but the reason I hate number changes so much is they are either completely fucking useless and too trivial to bother with, so strong playing the character without them is basically throwing, or crazy strong to the point where it makes an already strong character strong, and we will see some examples of all three today. So without further ado, let's check out the Hillbillies add-ons. Brown add-ons. Counterweight. Power level, lowest. This goes into a category that doesn't get used very often, the I'm a newbie category. Counterweight reduces your initial turn rate by 70%, effectively removing your ability to curve, and this only exists for people who are getting used to the character. The ironic thing, however, is that this won't help you get used to Hillbilly because an integral part of the Hillbilly is the ability to curve. This add-on is actually so bad it's detrimental to you as a player. It removes your main ability to loop effectively and removes skill expression, as well as removes your ability to learn how to play Billy. When you see my tier list in the end, you'll see this in the F tier, but if I was being a real stickler, I would go for F-, a tier of its own. Never, I repeat, never use this add-on. Cracked Primer Bulb, power level, lowest, increases the rate at which your overdrive builds by 15%, but it removes the ability to insta-down people with your chainsaw for the entire match. This should have been the meme add-on, giving blood points in the place of overdrive increase, but instead we have a relatively decent number increase with a massive downside on a brown add-on, which makes this add-on also a never use. It's honestly atrocious how bad both this and Counterweight are. Dad's Boots, power level, high, increases the turn rate of the chainsaw sprint by 30%. This does not, listen to me, this does not increase the turn rate of the initial turn rate, meaning this does not help with curves. This applies after that 1 second curve window, but it is still amazing because one of Billy's biggest weaknesses is map design. This add-on, along with its yellow counterpart Spike Boots, allow you to navigate even the worst, most cluttered nonsense maps in the game. With this add-on or spiked boots, only indoor maps become unnavigational, and even then some, like Leary's, you can have pretty decent distance you wouldn't gain otherwise. Back in my original Billy video, I said that it'd be good if Billy's base turn rate was more similar to Reinhardt from Overwatch during his pin, and that's what this add-on does. Now make it base kit and rework this add-on to be less boring. Steel-toed boots. Power level, mid, reduces the duration you are stunned after hitting an object with a chainsaw sprint by 10%. The cooldown after hitting objects is already pretty low and forgiving, and sure, it is beneficial to reduce it even more. The issue is, if the cooldown is already low, then making it even lower is kind of a wasted add-on slot. This is one of those situations where it's not a bad choice per se, but there are just better options for you. Yellow add-ons. Clogged Intake, power level, mid, decreases the overdrive decay by a flat 15%. Here's the thing. When it comes to overdrive and things that subsequently increase the power of overdrive, overdrive works far better as a temporary reward and not something you want all game. I know this sounds counterintuitive, and this can have a lot more to do with my particular playstyle over objective power levels, but overdrive works far better as a surprise factor to catch survivors out instead of a power boost that effectively is useful the entire game. I oftentimes curse the overdrive as it kicks in mid-curve attempt, or while I'm going for cross-map as the extra speed fucks my control. That being said, if you really love the overdrive mechanic, you'll probably rate this higher. Grease Throttle, power level, mid, reduces the cooldown time after using a chainsaw while not in overdrive by 5%. So this is where the description of the add-ons kind of gets confusing. This is actually a common problem because technically, there is no cooldown for the chainsaw. What the game means is you suffer from 5% less stagger when missing a chainsaw attack. This bonus, as far as I know, does not apply to hits on objects or survivors. Basically, after you end your chainsaw sweep, there is a breathing period where you can't attack, vault, break, or start another chainsaw rev. This window is not visually represented in any way outside of the prompt to activate the chainsaw coming back, so this reduces that window. It's not bad, but it's not good enough to consider. Off-brand motor oil, power level, mid, increases the charge weight of the overdrive meter by 15%. Again, much like with throttle, this ranking is more of my personal problem I have with overdrive as a passive activation over an active one. For people who think overdrive is the bee's knees, this add-on probably sits higher for you, but realistically it's not worth it in my opinion. Honestly, investing in an overdrive as a concept is something I'm not a fan with for add-on design, period. Spiked boots, power level, maxed, one of Billy's best add-ons, increasing your turn rate by a whopping 45%. This add-on creates the exact feeling I was looking for in original Billy. Once again, this only affects the sprint turn rate, not the curve window. That being said, in a full add-on rework, I'd change both these and Dad's boots and make the 45% turn base kit. Thermal casing, power level, lowest, reduces the dissipation of the overdrive when not using the chainsaw by 20%. Okay, this time, this isn't my personal hatred of passive overdrive activation. This is just straight up not good. Here's the deal. Billy is a very active killer. You are, at any given point in time, almost never not using the chainsaw. It benefits you next to nothing to have the passive dissipation reduced. You're better off using clogged intake, which is a flat increase to the duration, over this really shitty decay mitigation. Personally, instead of this, I would give this an effect that says that when the chainsaw enters overdrive, survivors within 16 meters of you become deafened for 15 seconds. Green add-ons, begrimed chains, power level lowest. By this point, you all know how I feel about the mangled and hemorrhaged nerfs. But even before those nerfs, there's just better options. After the nerfs, there's no point. You down someone, it takes you a few seconds to get them up and get them to the hook. By the time they get unhooked and the timer is almost gone, so they just hop on a gen or jack off or whatever and get healed at regular speed later. Also, outside of low pro builds, you really don't care if the survivors are injured for long or not because you have a fucking chainsaw. Realistically, this add-on is a waste of time. Discarded air filter, power level low, increases the delay before the overdrive meter begins to decay by 20%. Again, why not just use clogged intake for the increased flat duration? There's just no reason to use half of these add-ons over a yellow add-on, and that just makes me sad. Billy has 5 different add-ons that all essentially do the same shit in different ways, and the best one of them is a yellow add-on. And at this point, scrap this effect and screw the effect in the purple category and just make them duration add-ons. For this one, I think that when the chainsaw enters overdrive, it should become silent until overdrive goes away. Low kickback chains, power level high, reduces obstacle stun time by 15%. This is actually incredibly powerful. Similar to its brown counterpart steel-toed boots, it's just making an already powerful stat even more powerful, which is bad for diversity design, but good for power level. Ragged engine, power level lowest. This is thermal casing, but at 30%. Again, why use this when you could just use a flat duration increase and not have to worry about not getting its full effect? This one's actually kind of funny. I thought, what if instead, whenever you hit an obstacle with the chainsaw, it decreased the charge time of the chainsaw by 10% for like 5 seconds or something? That sounds kind of funny to me. The Thompson mix, power level, mid, reduces cooldown while not in overdrive by 10%. Again, like the motor oil, what they mean is it decreases the breathing window after missing the chainsaw. This ranks slightly higher than motor oil because 10% is actually noticeable, but realistically, there are just better add-ons that are yellow that go in this slot. Purple add-ons, Apex Muffler, power level, mid. This add-on is interesting. The chainsaw cannot be heard from outside the terror radius. This is theoretically good. The problem is, in order to be truly effective, it has to be paired with other things, either the filthy slippers, monitor, any undetectable perk, or what have you. The survivors being able to hear the chainsaw in a 32-meter radius from you is still good. So this add-on sits in the B tier because when you use it with literally anything that causes undetectable, it's amazing, and there's no shortage of undetectable perks in the game. Filthy slippers, power level, mid. After sprinting for 2 seconds, become undetectable for the remainder of the chainsaw sprint. This is good because the chainsaw's noise levels differences when it's getting closer is very slight. So this can help you sneak up on survivors with the sprint, making it to where they don't realize you are on them before it's too late. And of course, it also pairs with the Apex Muffler extremely well. High-speed idler screw, power level, low, increases the decay delay for overdrive by 30%. Second verse, same as the first. Instead here, I feel like it'd be cool if when you hit a generator with a chainsaw sprint, the gen gets damaged for 5% and then begins regressing. Low Pro chains, power level, maxed. This is the quintessential add-on for Billy. Pallets are your second biggest counterplay outside of windows. When hitting a pallet with your chainsaw sprint, you do not stop. Your curve window returns and the chainsaw does 1 health state to survivors for the remainder of that chainsaw sprint. This makes pre-dropping against Billy basically useless, and this is hands down Billy's best add-on. I farmed the Blood Moon event and got almost 200 of these things. I am never taking them off. It is crucial to playing Billy that you have these. Eerie add-ons, iridescent engravings, power level, maxed, increases the speed during your chainsaw sprint by 20%, but the charge time by 12%. Fast chainsaw go brrr. I mean, I don't know if I really need to explain this, but the sheer speed you get is insane, makes you less predictable. This also boosts your curve window, not increase the turn rate, but the speed at which you curve, meaning you're likely to hit curves you normally wouldn't. Tuned carburetor, power level, high, increases the charge speed of the chainsaw by 20%, but decreases base movement speed to 4.4 permanently. Good overall, honestly. Paired with engravings, it makes a pretty hard to beat combo. My opinion on Billy's add-ons changed several times while writing this section. I initially was prepared to say outside of a couple, he didn't really have any bad add-ons. Then, as I wrote, I was ready to give behavior a 4.5 or even a 5 out of 5 for sheer good balancing. However, after looking over them again, I'm afraid the score drops to a 3.8 out of 5. While balance is really well done here, there's just not a lot of creativity on display. 3 purple add-ons give neat bonus effects, and 1 green gives a debuff, but everything else is just raw number increases. And 5 add-ons do effectively the same fucking thing with slightly different numbers and ways of doing that thing. Clogged intake, ragged engine, thermal casing, discarded air filter, and idler screw are all just dedicated to making the overcharge last longer, and we just do not need that fucking many. Just an overall lack of attempt to make more interesting use of the chainsaw. You know, things like bumping a gen starts regressing it, or maybe if they had one that allows you to vault windows all Wesker-like, or something silly like that. I don't know, man. I just think a lot more could have been done with them. Okay, here's to hoping we can get through this entire thing without the sound cutting out on me. Again. I'm sorry that happened in the Wraith video, by the way. It's just, by the time it was pointed out to me, I had already redid that section probably about 4 times, and I just wasn't doing it again for a little under a minute of missing audio. I hope you guys understand. In any case, Billy perk tier list, just like always, I have to remind you guys that just because something gets placed low in this particular tier list does not mean its power level is low. It just means that it's not good on Hillbilly. The things you're going to be looking for whenever building with Hillbilly are things that keep you in the chase longer, things that keep you in the chase more often, and things that allow you to discover where people are from basically across the map. So a lot of his best perks are going to be things that allow him to either passively slow down gens or allow him to get into his next chase faster. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into, I've got to explain the tiers just in case. So always use, pretty self-explanatory, highly recommended and recommended, pretty self-explanatory. Can use means that it's not necessarily a bad thing for you to use. It's just not something that I would recommend you use. Don't use if you don't have to is literally like, just don't use these perks. Like, it's not going to be detrimental to you, but they are really a waste of time, and they're never used is basically a detriment to you. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Agitation, you don't really need agitation that much. Confirming hooks as Hillbilly is not that hard. You end chases fairly quickly, so if you need to take a couple of extra seconds to confirm a hook, then you can take a couple of extra seconds to confirm a hook. Alien Instinct is trash and always has been trash. Nurse's Calling is... you don't really need Nurse's Calling. I know I said aura reading's really good, but like... You just don't need Nurse's Calling. Like, by the time you are in the radius of Nurse's Calling, they know you're there, and you have an insta-down anyway, so who cares, right? Awakened Awareness is... You can use Awakened Awareness. While carrying a survivor, you see the auras of survivors that are in a certain meteor radius of you. The problem with this is that once you put those survivors once you put the survivor down or put them on a hook, you no longer see the aura, so this doesn't really help you that much. Bamboozle is a necessary perk on Hillbilly because your biggest counters are pre-drop pallets and windows. You want to be able to shut down windows as much as possible, so Bamboozle is just a guarantee. Like, you have to use Bamboozle on Billy. You don't have to, but you get my point. Batteries included. You can use it if you want to. Whenever a generator is completed and you get near that generator, you get haste. This doesn't really help Billy that much. I mean, haste is nice because if I am correct, I might be wrong in this, but if I'm correct, haste does technically make you faster during the chainsaw sprint. So sure, but not necessary. Trash perk, don't even bother. Bitter Murmur is actually in the recommended. The only reason I don't put it, well, no, we'll put it in highly recommended. When a generator gets completed, you see the auras of survivors next to that generator, and then once all generators are completed, you see the auras of all survivors for 10 seconds. So it's a highly recommended perk. If you're a little bit lost or you're not currently in a chase, generators get completed, you go, I see them. They're going this way, this way. You charge your chainsaw, cross map them, have an orgasm, whatever the hell that might happen. Blood Echo is, don't use Blood Echo. You're not going to be keeping survivors injured long enough for it to matter. Like, that's probably not accurate. More accurately, you are not a hit and run killer. And so you are not spreading as much injury pressure as you should. Most of the time, survivors are just going to heal up because you don't care if they heal up. You have a fucking chainsaw. Bloodhound is dog shit. Blood Warden. Blood Warden's actually really funny. I'm not going to recommend Blood Warden because at the end of the day, it is a perk that you will not get a lot of use out of. But it is really funny to hook someone, watch the survivors scatter to try to get out of the gate, and then have them all just get stuck there, and then you just down them all with your chainsaw. Brutal Strength, do not ever use Brutal Strength. Your chainsaw is more than enough. You're either going to be running low pro, which is, you should be running low pro if you want to win games, or you're just going to charge your chainsaw up really fast and break it. You do not need Brutal Strength at all for Hillbilly. Call O'Brien is fine. You should not be kicking gens as Hillbilly. This is actually a mistake I make a lot. I have this very bad penchant for kicking gens. I have to kick gens. I don't know what it is. Realistically speaking, if you are playing the Hillbilly correctly, you should not be kicking gens. But it is still a gen regression perk, so I can't in good conscience tell you to never use it. The opposite is true for Corrupt Intervention. You are going to be getting downs very fast as Hillbilly. So Corrupt Intervention is just you're not going to get value out of it. You're never going to get the full 2-minute timer out of Corrupt Intervention. You just won't. Corlophobia, again, you really don't care that much if they heal, so don't even bother with it. Coup de grace, you should not be M1ing that often. You are often put in situations where you need to M1 though. So coup is not necessarily a bad choice, but you shouldn't be M1ing as Hillbilly. Claustrophobia is actually pretty fucking... Every time a generator is completed, every vault location on the map gets blocked for 16 seconds or something. Unironically not bad. I'm going to put it in recommended though, just because it relies on generators being completed. So it's probably going to go at the bottom of recommended. Dark Devotion, not necessarily bad. I could put it. Yeah, we can put it in recommended. Damage the Obsession. The Obsession gains your terror radius. You become undetectable. It's never a bad thing to be undetectable, especially with Hillbilly. Like I said back in the add-on section, one of the big things about Hillbilly's chainsaw is that the distance modifier to the sound is very slight and hardly noticeable. A chainsaw that's far away and a chainsaw that's right on your ass sounds incredibly similar, so undetectable is not necessarily a bad thing. Darkness Revealed, an aura reading perk that you can get auras from across the map. Unfortunately, locker placements are just shit in this game, so it's not really that great, to be honest. Deadlock is a highly recommended perk. Like I said, your biggest thing with Hillbilly is passive slowdown. You want slowdowns to happen without much input from you because you are too busy chasing survivors, bounding from one end of the map to the other with your chainsaw to try to down people. So you really don't need to worry about all that. Dead Man Switch, same thing with Deadlocked. It's a passive slowdown. I can highly recommend it. Deathbound, survivors finish healing, they scream and become oblivious. You can use it. I don't recommend it, but you can use it. Deerstalker, you're not going to be slugging as Hillbilly. I mean, not really. You might slug to ward off a flashy save or a potential pallet, but you're not a slugging killer. That's more Oni's thing. Discordance, very good info perk. We can go ahead and put that right below Bitter Murmur. It's just a really good, you know where to go, so you can rev your chainsaw and go, vroom, and then catch them as they go, oh shit, the hillbilly's here, and pop off the gen or whatever case. Dissolution, you're going to be insta-downing most of the time anyway, so who cares? Distressing, it benefits you literally zero. It does not benefit you at all to have your terror radius be bigger. Dragon's Grip, you're not kicking gens and you don't care about the exposed. Dying Light, it's a slowdown, I guess. It's not a good one, but it's there. Enduring, this one's so hard because you're not really getting pallet stunned that often. Generally speaking, you're either breaking pallets or you're downing them before they get to drop the pallet. So like, I don't know. It's very hard to stun the hillbilly, so I don't think you need to worry about that. Eruption, once again, you shouldn't be kicking gens. Do not model yourself after me. Like I said, I have a gen kicking addiction, but realistically, if you're trying to win, you should not be kicking gens as the hillbilly. Fire Up doesn't really make that much of a difference to you. Forced Hesitation. Ooh, this one's actually not too bad. Because when you put a survivor into the dying state, survivors within 16 meters of that survivor get hindered, which means you could chain together chainsaw downs. I'm going to put it in can use. Force Penance, protection hit, they become broken. Who cares? Franklin's is a tech perk, so it's always going to go in recommended. Friends Till the End is actually a highly recommended perk. So when you hook the obsession, somebody screams and becomes the obsession. So you have cross map information. If you hook someone who's not the obsession's aura gets revealed to you. So you have cross map information and you can capitalize on it. Furtive Chase is not necessarily bad. Hook the obsession, become undetectable, and get haste. The undetectable's great. The only problem with it is that you don't really get a lot of information to capitalize off of. So while the undetectable and the haste are cool, you're not necessarily getting information. This perk has to be paired with other perks in order to be good on Hillbilly. Game of Foot, damage the survivor with the highest chase time with a basic attack. Yeah, we don't care about that. Gearhead, you can make an argument for Gearhead being in recommended, I think. Whenever you injure a survivor for a health state, like at all, like so when you down them and a survivor hits a good skill check on a gen, their aura is revealed to you. So you down a survivor and then as you're hooking them, you look around, you're like, he hit a skill check. And then you chase them down. Genetic limits, whenever a survivor finishes healing, they become exhausted, I believe. Great, I guess. I would say never use. Like, you care about exhaustion, but not really. Grim Embrace is a perk, was one of my favorite perks on Hillbilly. It's one of the best passive slowdowns in the game. It's one of those perks where you can you hook someone, you chainsaw sprint away, and all the gens get blocked, and then you down somebody before the gen blocking is over. You gain massive amounts of value from it. Hex Crowd Control, actually not a bad perk. You don't really get a lot of use out of hex perks as Hillbilly. You're not worried about defending your hexes. You technically have the ability to defend your hexes very well, but you're not really worried about it. But if you're looking for a solid window blocking perk that's not Bamboozle, or if you want to be cringe like me and run a complete window blocking build, I'm fucking stupid. This is Hex Blood Favor. Someone's already typed a comment. Someone's already been like, actually, Kaiser, you called Blood Favor crowd control. All right, everything I just said about crowd control, let's put it up here, because this is actually crowd control. This is Hex Blood Favor. Whenever you injure a survivor, block pallets. This is not bad for Hillbilly because you can stop pallet saves from happening, but it's also not that great because you're not going to be M1ing that often. So we'll put it at the bottom of recommended. I'll compromise with you guys. Devour Hope. Technically, you can gain tokens really well, but why do you care? Honestly, you can already insta-down. Face the Darkness, pretty decent info, but you're traversing the map so often that survivors are rarely outside your terror radius. Haunted Grounds, you don't care. Lullaby, You don't use if you don't have to. I'd honestly put it at the bottom. Lullaby is a pretty bad perk, like, overall, but you honestly don't care. Sure, it could be technically passive slowdown, but not one you care about. Noed, it's in the kit. Pentimento, it is technically slowdown, but Pentimento has to be paired with other hexes. So, because most of the time, 9% of the time, survivors are not just randomly cleansing dull totems. So, Plaything, never a bad choice on almost any killer. There's ever since I found out that Dr. Shock still works when the survivors are oblivious, who gives a fuck about Plaything? You know what I mean? Who fucking cares about Plaything? I'm sorry, not who cares about Plaything. I mean, that's not what I meant. I'm fucking, dude, I'm so delirious right now. Plaything is great on every killer. I don't think you can ever go wrong with Plaything on a single killer. It provides slowdown, it provides stealth, it provides snowball potential. Like, you can literally not go wrong with Plaything on any killer. Retribution, you technically get auras from Retribution when it's cleansed. Yeah, we'll put it at bottom of recommended. Ruin, very good slowdown for you. Very, very good slowdown for you. You chase survivors off of gens very fast, and so it's good to not have to worry about kicking them. Very, very good slowdown for you. Third Seal, worthless. Thrill of the Hunt, worthless. 2 can play. Funny Faha meme perk, not exactly worthless, but not exactly worth mentioning either. Undying, only good with other hexes. Obviously, it's literally built to get other hexes. Hoarders, worthless. Hubris, worthless. Hysteria, worthless. I'm all ears. Bottom of recommended. Top of can use. Bottom, right above Retribution. I'm all ears. Whenever they fast vault, you see their aura for like 10 seconds, which is great. And it allows you to like kind of predict the curves a little bit better. So yeah, we'll put it in recommended. Infectious Fright, highly recommended. Down a survivor, every survivor within your terror radius screams. So you get the opportunity to see if anybody's hovering for a cheeky flashlight save or something like that. So definitely highly recommend. Actually, we'll put Friends to the end above Discordance, I think. No, Discordance is, well, yeah, that's where we'll put that. Insidious, worthless. Funny, hilarious even, but worthless. Iron Grasp, don't need it. You just don't. You're not, like I said with Agitation. Where did I put Agitation at? I put Agitation in can use. We'll put Iron Grasp in can use as well then. Iron Maiden, worthless. Knockout, worthless. Lethal Pursuer, always use. Lethal Pursuer is just, I mean, you're Hillbilly. You start the game, you see their auras, you chainsaw sprint across the map. Most of the time you get a down. Like 99% of the time you will get an instantaneous down. This perk is so fucking phenomenal on Hillbilly because it's literally like, oh, free ass early game pressure. And on top of that, it works so well with all your other aura reading perks. Friends till the End, Gearhead, I'm all ears, Retribution, like every other aura reading perk that you're going to be using. Great. Leverage, trash in general. Lightborn, a tech perk, so it goes right here with Franklin's. These two are basically interchangeable in the tier list at all times. Genetic limits, you should not be kicking gens and you really don't care about haste that much. Mad Grit, power level worthless, meme potential, funny as hell. Make your choice. Bottom of can use. You don't really care about the exposed, but technically you can utilize this perk better than other killers can, so. Merciless Storm, pretty decent slowdown, especially with you constantly bouncing around on generators and stuff like that. It's great. Also, I just realized barbecue and chili is not in this list. Why is it at the bottom? I just noticed this. Why is this at the bottom? Did I fuck something up? Anyway, barbecue and chili goes in always use. That literally just crossed my mind because I was like, these are a lot in alphabetical order. Holy shit. Anyway, barbecue and chili is another always used perk because, I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Hook a survivor, see the furthest survivor from you, just go and fucking get them, man. Amazing perk. Amazing fucking perk for you. Fearmonger, yes. Exhaust the survivors so they're less likely to sprint burst away from you. and it blinds them for funsies. But the exhaustion is the more important part. Less likely to sprint burst away from you, less likely to gain distance on life. Like, just fuck exhaustion perks. That's basically what this perk is. This is one of the best perks in the game. Monitor and abuse, not necessarily great. If you want to try a stealth Billy, there's better options, but fuck it. We'll put it at the bottom of can use. We'll put it above awakened awareness. Why the fuck not, right? Nemesis, you shouldn't be getting stunned that often, so who cares? No Way Out, fantastic fucking perk. Fantastic fucking perk. Gives you 60 extra seconds in the end game, stops them from opening the gates. So if you make it to the end game and you know what I mean, and you need some more time, that's your more time. Nowhere to Hide. Now, here's the thing. You should not be kicking gens as Billy, but this is a really, really good fucking perk. This is a really good fucking perk. I can't in good conscience tell you that I put this any lower than highly recommended. It's just such a good fucking perk, dude. Kick a gen, look for rats, trap them in a corner with a body block, chainsaw down. Easy. Pression, you shouldn't be kicking gens. Overcharge, you shouldn't be kicking gens. Overwhelming presence, who cares? Play with your food. You can use it. Really wouldn't recommend it, but you can use it. No, sorry. Don't use it if you don't have to. My bad. Don't use it if you don't have to. Pop, you shouldn't be kicking gens. We'll actually put Pop at the bottom of can use because you shouldn't be kicking gens, but Pop is an effective enough gen slowdown that I can't put it in never use, you know? Who gives a fuck about Predator? Rancor's power level is weak. Rapid Brutality, you don't M1. Remember Me is an in-game perk that I'll put right above Pop. Save, you're not M1ing. Floods is a good info perk. We'll put it above Discordance. Or below Discordance, above Infectious. Gift of Pain is a slowdown perk that you can technically use, but I wouldn't really use it. So you can use it, but I wouldn't. Hangman's Trick is trash. Monster Shrine is unironically can use. I have been saying that I don't think Monster Shrine is necessarily underrated, but I think it gets a lot more hate than it deserves. It's not necessarily that bad. Pain Resonance, best slowdown in the game. Why would you not? Septic Touch, who gives a fuck? Shadowborn, who gives a fuck? Shattered Hope, who gives a fuck? Sloppy Butcher, you're not M1ing, and also Sloppy got completely gutted. Spies of the Shadows, very bad info perk, but hey, go for it. Spirit Fury, I'll put Spirit Fury right above Enduring. That's not bad. Yeah, we can put it up there for sure. Starstruck, who cares about Expose? You're not M1ing. Strider, who cares? Superior Anatomy, who cares? Wait, actually, right there. I think that's fine. Surge, you're not M1ing. Surveillance, you're not kicking gens. Well, Surveillance technically works off any gen progression, doesn't it? We'll put Surveillance down here. Terminus, you're usually not leaving people injured for very long. Territorial Imperative is trash. Thanophobia is trash. Thrilling Tremors is info and slowdown, kinda. Don't use it if you don't have to. Thwack, no. Tinkerers, yes. Great info. Undetectable is amazing. Pairs very well with your purple add-ons. No reason to use Trail of Torment ever since Unforeseen came to the game. Ultimate Weapon's about to get fucking, destroyed. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. I am filming this part of the video before the live changes are announced. So, Ultimate Weapon, if Ultimate Weapon loses its Scream, never use. If it keeps its Scream, bottom of recommended. Deal? I'm going to rank this as if it's going to lose its Scream and put it in never use. But if it keeps its Scream after the changes go live, recommended. Unbound, who gives a shit? You don't really care about the haste after vaulting a window. You know what? We'll put it. Where's Superior Anatomy? I put it up here. No, it's not as high as Superior Anatomy. We'll put it above Surveillance. Undone. This is the skill check one. It's dog shit. Unforeseen. Amazing perk. You should not be kicking gens, but getting undetectable is good. Bottom of recommended. Unnerving Presence, not really. You can use it. Yeah, you don't use it if you don't have to, I think, honestly. And we'll actually put it like way up here. Don't use if you don't have to. Unrelenting, you're not M1ing. Whispers, who gives a shit. And Zinchin Tactics, who gives a shit. So you can tell I'm getting a little bit faster at this. And the reason for that is because I have decided, like, I used to try to go in depth with all of these perks, but I'm trying to give you guys a general idea of perks that work well with Billy. So the only perks I'm really worried about explaining myself on are the perks that go in recommended or higher. Everything else is more of a general vibe. You kind of get the idea. So I don't want to like repeat myself a whole bunch of times. And that's why I did this kind of fast, is to save you guys time, because at the end of the day, realistically speaking, I might not, for the nurse video, I might just make the tier list and then show it on screen while I'm explaining it. You know what I mean? Instead of filming myself making the tier list, might just make it, put the picture on screen and be like, hey, this is why I'm doing it this way. This is why these perks belong where they belong. So that's probably what I'm going to do for the nurse video. Keep these sections a little bit shorter. There's a thing here. I'm going to kind of talk you guys' ear off for a second while you take the time to, sync this tier list in. But there was a time when I first started, especially with the Trapper video, where I was like, I got to hit an hour. I got to hit an hour and a half. I have to make these videos long. Guys, I'm just worried about getting you the relevant information, right? I don't want to repeat myself 5 billion times. I don't want to, feed you unnecessary information. These videos are about creating an analysis and going over what I like and dislike about each character and what I would change and keep the same. And if that means that these videos end up being 15, 20 minutes long, then they end up being 15, 20 minutes long. If I have enough to say and talk about that I reach, the hour mark, then cool. But I don't really like the idea of continuing to force these long time codes by doing unnecessary stuff. You know what I mean? So I hope you guys understand that this video is probably going to be shorter than the last two, and that the nurse's video will almost definitely be shorter than this one. But I am more concerned with giving you guys a nice, relevant, well-edited, well-spoken video than I am with trying to reach an arbitrary number. And I'm sure you guys understand that. So let's go ahead and hop over to the conclusion. I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. And let's finish the video up. The final score for the Hillbilly is a 3.6 out of 5. The Hillbilly is a character I've fallen in love with, and one that frustrates me to no end. It sometimes feels like I'm actively fighting against behavior. I want to enjoy Billy to his fullest potential, but then I just end up getting fucked by bad collision or one of the half-dozen maps he's bad on, and I sit down and have a little cry. It's like Billy is a Saint Bernard, and behavior would rather lock him in a kennel all day than let him out to run around and exercise and do work. My 3 favorite things about Billy would be his core gameplay, cross-map snipes, and low-pro chains. My 3 most hated would be his bad collision, the cartoon villains in his backstory, and the 5 overdrive duration add-ons. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed my analysis of Billy. We are getting these done at a much better pace than I expected, and I'm hoping to be fully caught up on every killer by this time next year so that I can do one of these with each killer release. Other than that, let me know what you guys think down below, and as always, a great big special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today and get awesome perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.